All that I really care about is creating maximum positive impact in the world through media and technology. I believe we're at that renaissance moment for humanity.
What is Raiinmaker?
This technology is going to transform the entire world. The initial focus was, how do we quantify the value of each human's contribution on social media? Users are posting content and they're engaging and they're creating all this informal value for brands. They're not getting anything for that. Now it's evolved to say, well, how do we quantify the value that each human is contributing to train AI? Simultaneously, about 2 years ago, the bigger thing that we started building was the actual network protocol. So the ability for users to have an infrastructure where they can actually leverage decentralized AI and scalable Web3 infra for sports, gaming, entertainment, creator economy, these mass adoption use cases. We're able to then quantify at scale millions of people and saying, we know that this model was trained with this data from this user. We feel confident that's beyond anyone else, any of our competitors in the space. So that's what we've built with Raiinmaker.
What's DePIN, decentralized physical infrastructure network?
How do we, again, bring it to the individual user? Make it so we build a network that anyone can come on and contribute, be rewarded for that value that they're contributing. So right now, people are able to actually run a validator node on our network.
What's a former filmmaker who wears cowboy hats doing as the CEO of a blockchain company?
I've always, my whole life, been entrepreneurial. So even as a filmmaker or producer, we've always run independent companies. We've always raised financing independently. I've always had to eat what I kill. My whole adult life has been, kind of shaped by having to go out there as an entrepreneur with kids and a family relying on me and find a way to succeed in spite of how difficult it might seem or how there might not seem to be a path towards bringing forth that dream to empower humanity at a global scale, that actually 100% it's going to happen.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Seraphine, the film and TV producer, media technology pioneer, and blockchain expert. You bring over 16 years of experience on the cutting edge of the entertainment industry, working with the biggest names in film and TV like Leonardo DiCaprio and Natalie Portman, with your hit Broadway play Rock of Ages nominated for a Tony. You also directed the groundbreaking documentary series Open Source Money about the rise of Dragon Chain and the global evolution of cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. You are the co-founder and CEO of Raiinmaker, one of the fastest growing Web3 companies designed for the social creator economy. Raiinmaker is an AI-powered super app that rewards users for generating AI content and training AI models, while ensuring creators of all sizes earn crypto when they share content to social networks. You believe Raiinmaker will have a massive positive impact on the future of the global cultural landscape, and that the merging of AI and Web3 will empower people from every corner of the world. JD, welcome to London Real.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
It's great to have you here. I just want to start by saying that Raiinmaker is one of our portfolio companies here at London Real Ventures, the world's first media-powered investment firm, where our mission is to transform the world by investing in cutting-edge Web3 and AI companies, while giving our partners marketing exposure across the London Real media platforms and our academies. We heighten awareness, create customers, and build communities by leveraging our global audience and extensive network. JD, I am super excited to be part of this journey with you. It's so congruent with everything that we do. So let's jump in. What is Raiinmaker?
What is Raiinmaker? Well, first I want to say we're grateful to have you guys on board. I think it's easy to take for granted the importance of having the right people, the right companies supporting you on your journey as an entrepreneur. When we started Raiinmaker, actually goes all the way back to 2018. So it's a 6-year journey for me to learn as a technology entrepreneur, like how to actually navigate a very challenging landscape, especially coming from the U.S. All of the challenges that we've seen there with regulators not being clear about how to engage in this new powerful technology in terms of blockchain and cryptocurrency. It's been an interesting journey to get here. So Raiinmaker started in 2018. The initial focus was, how do we quantify the value of each human's contribution on social media? So when you look at our current social media landscape, users are posting content and they're engaging and they're creating all this informal value for brands or things that they're passionate about. And they're not getting anything for that. So we actually have on the media side, one of our biggest IPs is a project called Atari, which is the story of Nolan Bushnell, who was the founder of, not just of Atari, but he's like one of the godfathers of the whole, not just video games, but digital technology revolution. Think Steve Jobs and Wozniak worked for him at Atari before they created Apple. Parts for the first Apple computers came from Atari. So one of our biggest media IPs, Atari, is essentially Nolan's like official biopic or whatever. That's the one we're doing with Leonardo DiCaprio and his production company. So that brought me into the space in 2018, and I was saying, okay, how do we create a system, a platform that could look at the 3 billion gamers around the world and reward them for the social influence engagement that they would drive when we bring that project to market. Once I got in though, I was like, this technology is going to transform the entire world. And my main passion really is around creating impact. I believe that we're at a critical juncture as a species where humanity absolutely needs to make an evolutionary leap in order to create a heaven on earth, to create a new world. And so for me, everything I do with Raiinmaker, the media company Vision Tree, all of our efforts are around that. How can we create that impact? And I think you and I aligned on that. So once I got in, Atari was the thing that motivated me to come in. But once I came in, I was like, I just went full on down the rabbit hole. We started investing, started building. The Raiinmaker social creator app launched in July of 2020, initially with a beta launch to support open source money, which was the first documentary series to be funded with cryptocurrency to then air on cable television in the US, which in and of itself, in the middle of COVID, was a whole different challenge.
That's big though.
It was big and it was cool and it was a fun, crazy journey. As we documented what the SEC was doing, kind of coming back to my journey as I was an entrepreneur trying to figure out how do we do this in a way that's safe and compliant and legal, and so many challenges that you face as an entrepreneur, which I think being a producer prepared me to face those challenges. Because when you're a producer, as you know, it's like you're wearing multiple hats, you're solving problems. There's a lot of similarities. So initially, that's where Raiinmaker was focused around the social creator side of things. About 2 years ago, when AI technology really started exploding in terms of its exponential, rate of acceleration, we were like, look, we obviously need to shift and make sure that we're incorporating this powerful technology along with Web3 and blockchain into what we're doing at Raiinmaker. So first we focused on generative art content creation in the application itself. And then more recently, we launched the ability for users to actually train stable diffusion models inside the Raiinmaker app and be earning cryptocurrency or rewards based on the value they're contributing to training AI. So imagine the original focus was like, what is the value of each user's contribution with their social content? Now it's evolved to say, how do we quantify the value that each human is contributing to train AI, either through direct feedback or through their data? Because as we go into this like AI-powered digital economy of the future, which is just rapidly accelerating, you have Microsoft and Google and all the usual huge tech, oligopolies that are essentially like owning, these really powerful AI models. How do we ensure that humanity as a whole is not left behind? And I think that's where, coming back to that empowerment piece, we're saying, okay, there needs to be the right infrastructure that is able to quantify the value of each human's contribution to training AI. So we built the application, Raiinmaker AI super app, that's running. It's iOS, Google Play. Your users can download it right now and go in and earn crypto and have fun and generate cool art. The art people create is like amazing in the application. But simultaneously, about 2 years ago, the bigger thing that we started building was the actual network protocol, which is also, under the brand of Raiinmaker. So the ability for users to have an infrastructure, or applications rather, where they can actually leverage decentralized AI and scalable Web3 infra for sports, gaming, entertainment, creator economy, these mass adoption use cases. So not focused as much on like what other EVM networks are doing, but how can we build products and solutions that really empower the next billion people to come into AI and Web3 infrastructure? So that's really what Raiinmaker's focused on right now, is that decentralized AI and Web3 network that can power the next generation of applications. So Raiinmaker AI app is the first app or first application running on the network. The future is, we have a fan engagement system that we haven't announced publicly that we'll tease a little something today, but we have multiple professional sports teams that we're working with that we'll be announcing in the coming months that are partnered with us in developing that, which is running on the same thing, Raiinmaker network protocol. And we have other exciting like AI applications that are in development that we'll be announcing over the next 3 to 4 months as we go to market with the mainnet of the network itself and then the coin token alongside it.
This is so exciting because, look, when the ChatGPT moment happened, I went deep down the rabbit hole of AI. Now, because of this show, I was able to invite some pretty heavy hitters to talk to me about AI. So Mo Gaudet, old friend of mine, wrote a book called Scary Smart, ex-Google, ex-guy, who literally quit the company when he saw what they were doing with AI. I spoke to Peter Diamandis. I spoke to Dr. Ben Goertz of SingularityNet. I spoke to Max Tegmark, the MIT professor that asked for the 6-month halt. And I spoke to Hugo de Garis, who wrote a book called The Art-elect War, who predicts 1 billion deaths because of AI. Okay, I went deep. And I got very concerned about our big tech companies running AI because those same people censored me and do things that aren't always in our interests. And so I started looking at what are the alternatives? Like, how can we create this decentralized AI? How can we make it to where there's really, it's the humans that we're looking out for, Team Human. And that's what's really exciting about what you're doing. And I was wondering if you could explain this concept of decentralized AI infrastructure, because we hear all the time about OpenAI and we hear what Google's doing with Gemini or Bard or whatever the hell, and we just assume it's there and that there's not an alternative. But that's what you're creating, right?
I think creating the infrastructure that can power those more decentralized versions of models that are being trained with human data, but humans are being rewarded or compensated in some manner. And there's a more democratic approach to how not only the data that's being used to train those models, but also that there's some fractional distribution of value back to the individual or the human. So to say, if you're going to use my data to train an AI model, I should get something for that. Right now, these guys have hoovered up all this data, because basically in the Web 2 world, we all said, oh, I want free applications, you know what I mean? And then signed whatever the consent was that basically said, whatever data that flows through here basically is owned by those companies. And so, yeah, we got free products to use, which does add value. Look, being an entrepreneur, you can't, I don't think, ignore it's easier to be holier than thou and I think go to one extreme or the other. And I think somewhere in the middle is to say, we all got a bunch of really cool free products to use that did actually provide something in our lives. And some of us were even able to build businesses that ran on those or able to leverage those companies or those networks. Now, over time, they've messed with, even in the case of YouTube and what they did to you guys, which is obviously, undemocratic and wrong and all, you could go into the layers that better than me. I think that there's that balance of saying, yes, that was at one point to get to where we needed to get to, that model made sense. But where is the next level up for humanity? And it's to say that we all need to have a sense of, not a sense, but an actual real ownership in this digital economy that's being birthed. Otherwise, where are we going from here? People worry about AI taking people's jobs and eliminating jobs and whatnot, but a lot of these jobs that are going to get eliminated aren't necessarily the highest and best use of human consciousness and potential. So I come from the school of thought as okay, well, how can this technology empower us to be the best versions of ourselves? I believe that each human inside of us has this divine spark, has this unique thing that we're here to bring to the world. And I think the old system didn't empower the ability for most humans to be able to ever get out of that on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, to get off the bottom of thinking about food, shelter, security, basic stuff, to be able to say who am I? What am I here to bring to the world? Yeah. What am I here to express? And I think AI and Web3 together, the confluence of those two forces, those two powerful technological revolutions represents the opportunity to empower humanity in a way that we haven't seen in hundreds of years. Now, that being said, it doesn't mean that that's without problems, without challenges, like it's like, and I say heaven on earth is possible. It doesn't mean that there isn't suffering. Of course there will still be suffering. There's a bill that's going to come due for humanity in terms of the choices that we've already made. The question is going to be like, how do we set up future generations so they have a chance to create that world? And I think these technologies give us that opportunity.
Yeah, I do think you're right. There is a ideal future where AI allows everyone to express that unique gift. And I think everyone has it, but I'd say 99% of the people on the planet never get to find it because they're too busy working a job. They hate to buy stuff they don't need to impress people they don't like, right? Or whatever it is, or they can never get out to express. I mean, hell, I could still be a banker right now, chugging away, making money, thinking it's making me happy, and I would have never gone on this crazy journey where I created this thing that's now bigger than me. So imagine if everybody did that. I always say, imagine if in your city, everybody showed up as the best version of themselves every day. The bus driver's the best bus driver you ever had. The barista's the best one you've ever seen because they're all living their passion. It would be incredible. And I see a future where AI empowers that. I also see a future where AI dominates and in the wrong hands, it takes that power away. Something that Mo said to me, the former Google guy, he said, Brian, I'm not worried about the AI, I'm worried about the humans that control the AI. And that's when he sees potential darkness if it's in the wrong hands. And we've already seen like the folks at OpenAI, like the news has come out that they were running out of data. And so they went to YouTube and decided just to take all the data from there, even though it was against all the policy violations. But they were fiending so much for the data that they're already breaking rules to get it because they realize you just maybe pay the fine one day. And so we know what Silicon Valley looks like. And that's why it's exciting to see kind of what you're doing. You mentioned Web3 and AI. Why do those things go together so well? It's like the two great tastes that taste great together, like the chocolate and peanut butter that make this Reese's peanut butter cup. I was actually at Consensus last year and I was backstage with Yatsu of Animoca Brands. And just casually he said, look, Brian, I think that crypto is going to empower AI because AI is going to be full of these microtransactions and all these separate entities that have to communicate with each other and pay each other. And it was just an aside comment he made that I hadn't heard anyone say before. But you've been thinking about this for a while. So why is that the ultimate combo, would you say?
Well, you look at blockchain or cryptocurrency systems, global, frictionless, borderless, the ability for digital systems that are autonomous to be able to transact at a speed and scale that legacy systems can't support. So it's really the only payment infrastructure or economic layer that could really power this new AI, powered economy. It's happening. Like you said, whether or not people are going to act like this should or shouldn't happen, it's already happening so fast. It doesn't matter what anyone thinks. My whole thing is like, can we make sure there's a version of it where humanity gets to contribute to it in a meaningful way so that it gets enough of us programmed into it in terms of the right data, right? So put a little more human in the AI. That's even why on the Raiinmaker thing, we say the human-powered AI network, which is kind of like twisted on its head, because the reality is data is what's powering these AI models. It's all about the data, right? We all know that now. Like you said, OpenAI is like, we have to get more data. So what our network, what Raiinmaker does better at scale is being able to say, Brian contributed this data to this model at this moment in time. And that had a specific value based on what our smart contract, which is AI powered, is looking at, and the model that is being trained with your data. So the applications that are building on our network are very focused on specific high quality data from a very specific user that's training a specific model for a specific purpose. And that's very different than like this broader kind of catch-all where you see a lot of decentralized AI that's like, GPU, internet of GPUs, these different things, which again, these are all interesting, fantastic ideas to play around with. For us, we just feel like the focus is really about empowering the individual human. When I look though, coming back to your original question about, AI and Web3 together, and that's, I guess, kind of coming back to what I'm saying. What value can Web3 actually bring, or blockchain in this sense, bring to AI that really makes a difference? Because you're like, well, does AI really need, blockchain infrastructure with it? And I think it's a valid question. And I think for anyone that's building in the space, it's one that we have to ask and keep asking ourselves. And so again, looking at what our network already that we had developed was good at, it was saying, okay, taking each user's unique identity / reputation, their behavior / data, and then plugging that into these smart contracts and models where we're able to then quantify at scale millions of people and saying, we know that this model was trained with this data from this user, and times that times a million or times 100 million. That's the network we build, is able to do that at scale, which, we feel confident that's at a level kind of in terms of a performant blockchain that's beyond anyone else, any of our competitors in the space. There's a lot of people who are kind of moving in the similar kind of lane side by side, trying to attack this problem. We feel we have a unique position there in terms of the actual network we built and what it can do and what it can do well. But that's where, coming back to Web3 and AI, it's like, well, what can Web3 do that actually really adds value? Because it shouldn't just be a buzzword catchphrase, to raise money. It's about, how does it really provide value at the infrastructure level? And that's where we've built with Raiinmaker.
And it can also give you that provenance of the data that went into the AI model that creates an output. And I think people are starting to realize that. And when you go to the Google and the Geminis and the OpenAI, sometimes it hallucinates, sometimes it gives you the woke answer, sometimes it gives you that, and yet you have no idea where the data came from. A lot of that data has probably been even obtained illegally or by breaking copyright or from you and you not getting paid. But you also don't know what went into it, and so you don't know the result. And so some of the exciting things happening with companies like you is that we can go back and look, you can compensate that person, and then you can know what goes into that, because it is all about the data. And garbage in is going to be garbage out, and we've already seen examples of that. So if you can create that on the blockchain, it's so powerful, because the AIs of the future, we're going to all want to know, okay, what went into that? What created this result? And how can we be sure that it's something that we believe in, it's people that we know, it's real humans, and this is pretty exciting, that you're creating that.
I think we're not like creating, it's already running at scale right now.
It's huge.
The application is 75,000 plus downloads, and that's where we're seeing that starting to come into some parabolic growth on just the application layer. But the goal of the app is to I don't want to say to dog food the methodology, in a sense of how do we dynamically better quantify the value of each human's contribution to AI. And so I think we're already doing it at a scale, and we're already live in the market. And I think that it's moving so fast that in order for anyone to really actually be a part of it, you have to be moving at breakneck speed. I often liken it to being an entrepreneur in this space is kind of like you're in the air and the plane's on fire, and you have to figure out how to rebuild it before you crash and explode on the ground. So we're moving fast, but the plane's still on fire. Hopefully we get it done before we hit the ground and explode.
What's DPIN? Because this is a term we've heard recently, but it's something that you've been working on for a long time. I think it stands for Decentralized Physical Infrastructure Network. And contrast that perhaps to the GPUs that are in a data center that Microsoft spends $10 billion to power OpenAI. You're actually putting the physical infrastructure out in the world and also sourcing it from humans out in the world. Maybe you could talk about those two, because I don't think people understand what it is or understand why it's so important to have DPIN.
Yeah, so DPIN, like you said, Decentralized Physical Infrastructure Network, already in terms of the world of blockchain, this has existed for many years. This is not new.
Right, even the Bitcoin chain is, the ledger's located on all of these independent
you can look at
machines.
Bitcoin as the most powerful DPIN that there is, especially in terms of compute. That's why there's been some people recently proposing and saying, what if we could take all of this radical amount of computation that's happening on the Bitcoin network and actually direct it to be used for things actually underpinning the computational power of decentralized AI systems. It absolutely should be. The fact that computation is just being used to only secure the ledger that's saying, I sent you 0.1 Bitcoin and you sent it to that guy, which is cool. Trust me, I think Bitcoin's done stuff that no one can touch. In terms of censorship resistant blockchain network for transfer and store of value, nobody has touched it. Nobody's even come close to it. That's the reality. When you look at the core fundamental of what it is, now, because that network is now essentially the most powerful supercomputer on the planet, when you look at the collective compute of the Bitcoin network, it's blows everything away. So the thought of leveraging that for other things, to me, is an exciting idea. Now, Bitcoin maximalists may not agree, and I don't want to argue with them about it. But what we focused on with Raiinmaker is saying, okay, how do we, again, bring it to the individual user? Make it so we build a network that anyone can come on and contribute some value, whatever it is, be rewarded for that value that they're contributing. So right now on the network protocol, people are able to, via desktop, laptop, and mobile devices, actually run a validator node on our network. So right now there's 150,000 plus nodes running in testnet. So that's people on a mobile device, which is happening via the Raiinmaker app. All they do is sign a terms of service. Each user has not only the validator code running in the background, software that's essentially looking at the network and saying, are there blocks that I need to sign, or transactions that need to be confirmed, or is there the decentralized computation of AI data that needs to be processed using the GPU power of my smartphone or laptop or desktop device? And so that's like high level. To me, I would say we're more focused on what I would call like lightweight DePIN, meaning like not as much saying, oh, we're going to render, the next Star Wars movie, or we're going to render heavy computational stuff. Although we can do that in a decentralized, parallelized, computation across all the devices that is capable on Raiinmaker now. But we're more focused on the data side in terms of, again, this user validating and verifying this data was used to train this model, and doing that in a very distributed manner. So I would say at the core level of our network, we have what's called the user action layer, which is that, Brian Rose logs into Raiinmaker app, he generates a piece of art, he trains a stable diffusion model through data labeling. All of those actions are being actually signed on chain with your own cryptographic keys. So the first layer of the network is basically thousands or millions of users signing proof on chain of their own behavior or actions, which is radically decentralized. It's, again, philosophically a little different than other EVMs and other networks, which are great at what they do. We just, again, are very focused on a specific approach to mass adoption, scalable application of decentralized AI and Web3. So yeah, in terms of the DePIN side, again, bringing it back, the ability to process in a decentralized or distributed manner, AI computation and validation or verification of consensus across all of these devices, which anybody can be a validator on the Raiinmaker network, which is, I think, pretty cool.
That's super cool. Is anybody else doing this?
There's a lot of DePIN projects. I mean, I think that we have a very unique set of ingredients in terms of what we're doing and how we're doing it and why we're doing it. But there's a lot of DePIN projects. There's some amazing projects out there that are doing really cool stuff. But I think what we're doing is, again, our lens is always about how do we actually empower the next 50 million, 100 million, billion people, like build a real infrastructure that can scale. I think when you look at a lot of like EVM L2s, ultimately, like once you go down, all the way down the path, they run into the same scaling issues. I mean, you can see it with Solana, you can see it with different networks that are meant to be more scalable than Ethereum. And Ethereum works, it's just not cheap.
Right.
And so if you want to do something at scale and have a lot of data that's actually on chain, which is part of the whole value prop that blockchain represents, is to say that we know this data hasn't been changed. We know that 100% that immutability factor, which can underpin these new economy. What I think of like big picture when I got into blockchain, and I've, like you, had the opportunity as a filmmaker, because I have that side of what we do, to interview like hundreds of the smartest people in the industry.
So good, right?
What helped me to like hack my way to like understand something that's really complex and difficult by sitting across from smart people and just saying, hey, tell me what this is, and being able to download off these people. And what ultimately I came away with is to say, blockchain is transforming the way that value is created and distributed. And this idea that we can take all of this informal value that's out in the world, that right now maybe a lot of those legacy big Web 2 companies are kind of, hoovering up for themselves, which again, they're just running a business. They're not doing it in an evil manner. They're just, looking to increase profit margins. But for us, it's like, well, now we have the ability with these new systems in a more decentralized way to empower more people through the formalization of this informal value. So like in the case of, say, a sports team, because we're working with some sports teams, as I mentioned earlier, you have fans that are creating all this value in an informal way, and there's no feedback to them. There's this flywheel opportunity to say, you know what, Brian, I know what's your favorite sports team?
I'm really more of like a UFC person.
No, but even same thing. If you're a fan of a fighter, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have so many fighters that I like, but like Charles Oliveira is like a Brazilian champion. I'm a huge fan of him.
So even as a UFC fan, and UFC would be an interesting use case, you're creating a lot of times this informal value when you're basically out there talking about what you're passionate about or engaging as a fan, but there's no system that's been able to formalize that in a way that provides some sort of value back to you, which deepens that relationship between you and the thing you love.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're constantly looking at building, is the infrastructure that can support that. And then also take that data and say, wow, this data now can be used to train a model, which now makes the business smarter, that transform the relationship with you, makes your experience better as a fan, all of the above. Let's give some value back to you for your data that's being used in this new way. So that's how we see it, big picture.
I think what makes you different is that you think about the human as not only a node operator, as someone who can contribute to AI, but a human as a creator. And so I look at depend things, and depends are amazing, but sometimes, your computer is running like a mini 5G local network, which is great. And that's fine, and having that decentralized is definitely an option we want. But you're thinking about the human as all of these different aspects, and that makes it really exciting. And I look at the UFC now, you watch it on TV, and occasionally they'll post a tweet of somebody famous. That's about as interactive as it gets. And if you want to bet on it, maybe you go to some other network. Now, you can see the evolution of this. Both of us were in Dubai at Karate Combat, and you see these guys that have a token, and now they have the token that you can bet on, and you have a little more interaction.
Yeah.
But I see a future what you guys are doing, where I make a video with a prediction, or I talk about a move, or I talk about this, and then that gets tapped into the network, and I get rewarded, and it's this whole dance. It feels like we really are in a web 1.0 or 2.0 world when it comes to the things we love, like sports.
Yeah, because there's that parasocial experience, right? This idea that not only you can interact with the thing you love, but there is also you and your community interacting with it. And I think there's been a lot of companies experimenting to try to crack this, and it's not an easy thing to crack at all. We've got a specific, I think, focus on the infrastructure side about not just our own applications, but giving infrastructure to other companies that want to come and build, solutions that look to formalize that informal value around, sports, entertainment, gaming. We have a couple games in development on the network that we're excited about, because again, I think that's a very powerful vertical to attack in terms of, how do we quantify the value? Same thing of people who are playing games and what they're contributing on the infrastructure side. So yeah, I think we're approaching it from a number of angles a little bit differently than other blockchain companies. So hopefully at the end of the day, that thesis will be proven true based on performance.
And you're not trying to create another layer 2, because you're not sure that that's the solution. Ultimately, your stuff's going to be written back to the Bitcoin chain or the Ethereum chain. That isn't an end and means to an end, in your opinion.
So it's similar, I would say what we do is similar to Cosmos, or similar to Avalanche and subnets, in the sense that Raiinmaker's AI app runs on the Raiinmaker network protocol, and is almost has the equivalent of its own layer 1 instance that has its own smart contracts, its own NFT minting, token creation capability, DDID, all of that is built into the protocol. The finalization of consensus on our network, even for all those applications, happens when a validator signs the block, which is essentially the final smart contract computation. They sign that, and then it's notarized onto a public chain. So Bitcoin, ETH, BNB, we just added Base as another network, which is actually where our token's launching on Base, because I think there's a lot of exciting stuff around that ecosystem, and obviously Coinbase, as a player in the space, we feel like one of the more solid partners. So when you look at all that, it's okay, well, if you hash the proof of consensus on Bitcoin, essentially our network can be super scalable, super cheap, modular. I mean, you really could do anything with it at scale, but it's very secure at the same time, because that hash on Bitcoin ties back all the way to Brian logged in a Raiinmaker, trained an AI model, did all of this, those actions that were signed with your own keys. All of that data is rolled up to a hash on Bitcoin, which means that in order to change the data that's happening there's an unbroken string of trust. You'd have to literally be able to change the ledger on Bitcoin. So you do the math, it's we just inherited radically all this security, but our network can be super fast and scalable and do all these different things that allow us to power more mass adoption solutions. So people ask me, is it an L2? It's no, it's its own blockchain, but it's similar, again, more in that Cosmos type vein.
Nice.
Yeah.
What's the next year looking like for you? You've alluded to token launch, which is always a very exciting and I would guess nerve-wracking time, because you only get one. What does that look like? And what is, like I said, the next year look like for you as far as business development, partnership, hiring, raising money, all that stuff?
Well, I've been building for 6 years. So I've literally built through 2 bear markets without launching a token, and part of it is coming from the US and figuring out like, how do we navigate this legally speaking? And it's a challenge, I won't lie. It's like, it's taken a lot for us to get here. And I feel sometimes fortunate, blessed that we've survived. Like you look around as an entrepreneur, people see you when you're at this place like where we're at now. We have a lot of momentum and things are going our way, and things are trending in a very positive direction. They don't see you when you're in those dark nights of the soul and you're staring into the abyss and you're like, did I make the right choice coming down this road? Which now we feel a lot more confident the answer is yes. If you asked us 6 months or a year ago, it may not have been as clear. 6 months, we were like, yeah, this looks like, okay, this is gonna be good.
Yeah.
But a year ago?
End of 22, like post FTX and first quarter 23, I mean, those were dark days, right?
Yeah, it's very dark.
And if you're in the US, I'm sure a lot of companies threw the towel in.
I mean, I think even non-US, a lot of companies threw the towel in because it's difficult to find a way. I mean, luckily we had been through enough cycles. I knew the industry was going to come back. I knew the market would turn. And so it was like, okay, how do we look at where we position ourselves so that when it does, we're finally really there in terms of having like enough real value that we're bringing to the table, enough real utility for the token, having a real full-on decentralized AI Web3 blockchain network, that the token is that main, source of utility. So now we're at that place where it's like, okay, all the pieces are there. So the token launch upcoming, very soon, next month, we'll have announcements going out, which you guys will be, a part of. The main net of the network itself. So we've been in testnet since August of last year. So at Ethereum Toronto, Blockchain Futurist, we launched, which was intentional. I love Tracy and that team, and Ethereum launched in Toronto. So it's kind of like, let's go there and launch, which is cool. So now like coming into mainnet launch is a big moment for us. That's coming up in the next few weeks. Then we have these other applications and enterprise partners that we've already been working with for months that we haven't announced publicly because we wanted to make sure the time was right in terms of, the cadence of bringing new exciting stuff forward and launching it. Also making sure that the network itself was ready for those next wave of applications to deploy. So there's, again, one on the sports side that we'll be announcing very soon that we've got some amazing executives from the sports world and big teams we're partnered with. So that'll be announced in the coming weeks. We've got a couple games and a few other, we're actually adding it. I feel like every week or two we identify like a new partner, a new application that we're bringing in and bringing on the network. We're more focused on like quality over quantity. And again, I think there's a lot of networks that are already out there. If you're like, you want to build like an L2 perp dex on Bitcoin, like there's plenty of networks for that. That's not what our network's for. And there's nothing against that. It's just not what our focus is. So I would say those enterprise applications. And then the other thing is the continued evolution of what we're doing on the AI infrastructure side. Because that landscape is moving like, I don't think people understand the speed at which it's moving. So we're doing our best to like look at the deep in validator nodes, bringing in data scientists and engineers and looking at how we really like fine tune or hone what's happening with the deep inside of our infrastructure. So there's constant updates. Like there's a new version of the nodes that'll be launching in like 45 days. And then I think by the end of the year, have it on the roadmap to have like even more powerful capabilities in terms of that decentralized AI infrastructure.
Okay, I want to go deeper on the AI, but before I do that, do you find it's challenging to explain what you do to a sports team or to maybe less to a game because maybe they're already in the digital world, but like say to a sports team, is it hard to explain exactly what you do and how it's going to help their team? Because it took me a couple gets. When you first came on our call and pitched it, it's not like, okay, we're a layer 2. It's like we're this and we're this and we're this. Yeah. You empower creativity, your decentralized infrastructure, you have an AI component, and you also have, this chain and this coin, Now I get it. It's clicking really well, and it seems really amazing and unique. But does it take a few iterations to get people to buy in?
Well, the first major team, I've spent a few years bringing them along. I think now, even for us, like as a company, you're constantly honing your ability to articulate what you are. And even what you are is constantly evolving. So to say that, and I think you have to have that mindset. If you don't have that mindset as a startup, you're going to die. Because literally the world, like I said, is changing so fast. And the only advantage I have over the bigger companies is that I'm small and I'm nimble and I can decide, wait, like that's where the puck is going. The puck is here, but it's not going to be here very long because in AI, it's shooting. So it's like, I have to get there. And as an entrepreneur who has a smaller company than a Google and these massive guys, I could take my team and I could say, you know what? That is where there's an opportunity for us to create something in the market that's unique, that will allow us to have like some sort of, a piece of the market that's ours, that we really can bring some value. And so I think that's where we're constantly evolving. So even from when you and I first talked to now, I think our ability to articulate who we are and what we're doing is actually better. And I think it's constantly, I'm never satisfied. Like as an entrepreneur, I'm never satisfied not only with how we're articulating it, but what we're doing. And I think it drives my team a little nuts sometimes because like I'll go to them and say, look, like I think we have to look at this now, and they'll think like they're ready, like, oh, okay, we finished the product, we're ready to ship it, and I'm like, that's good, but now the product's going there, and they're like, okay, like JD, what are you doing? This is crazy. But at the same time, I think you have to do that to an extent. You have to be willing to constantly refine, pivot. So I think with the sports teams, it's just like anyone else. Like, what is the value it's really bringing to them and their fans? It's not about like, I think for blockchain, when we're very close to this breakthrough that a lot of us have been working towards and talking about, the next billion users, bridging Web 2 to Web 3. We were kind of one of the first companies, I feel like, that was like out there with that messaging, and which again, now all of a sudden I look around and I feel like every other person I see saying that, which is a good thing. I'm not like, oh, they copied it. It's like, no, that's the point. The point is we have to start thinking like we've all been on Crypto Island, basically, transacting with each other, almost like a casino where it's like we're all playing with each other's chips, which is fun. I think that's how you create and kind of like almost like a sandbox and you learn. But we have to bridge to where everyone else is and get them over here, or we have to go over there with the technology. And so everything we've been doing from the beginning is how do you create products that have a Web 2-like user experience so that grandma can do it. Anyone who's non-crypto native can come in and use the product. It's easy, they understand it, it's fun. The user experience matches or exceeds what they get with an Instagram or other products that they're used to. It has to be at that level. Otherwise, we won't win. And so I think we start from there and saying to our partners on the sports side, because they're looking for solutions. How do we deepen the relationship with the fans? How do we create opportunities for them to engage with us in more meaningful ways that allow them to be rewarded for all the value they can create for the team and to deepen that relationship? The thing that excites me most about sports is, I love sports. I grew up in the U.S., big NFL fan, big NBA fan, big, baseball was my first love. And NFL kind of took over just because I got into football like a lot of people in my generation. So it's like, I've always looked at like the fans really should have a little more ownership in what's happening there, the value that's being created. They should be getting a little more back for it. And so and again, you kind of have to like slowly work towards my big picture vision, like big dream would be, let's create a system where fans are actually own some portion of the teams, like the Green Bay Packers. And I think that, because that's again coming back like big picture. What is Web3? What does it really mean? Well, it's ownership, right? Yeah. I think as opposed to Web 2, it was like obviously it was all about the bigger oligopoly companies owning the data, owning everything. In Web 3, we own the data, we own the value, the individual user, the individual human. And so how do we, with sports, engineer systems that say, okay, these aren't fans anymore. This isn't some sort of passive relationship. This instead becomes, we're partners. Like we're actually really partners. And the value that I bring as a partner, as a fan, before I was just a fan, now I'm getting something back that deepens that relationship. And I think what we're hearing or what we're getting in the conversations we're having with teams is that they're looking for something like this. They're looking for a way to like deepen that relationship, but it has to be done in a way where they understand the value that around that is being properly measured and tracked, and it isn't being gamed. Because obviously in the digital world, you deal with bots, you deal with a lot of nefarious actors, deal with a lot of fraud, a lot of fake stuff. And so I think, again, that's coming back to what can blockchain infrastructure provide? Well, that provenance, that proof that this human contributed this data or this value or trained this AI with this piece of behavior from them. Now the team knows. They know, like right now, I don't want to mention the team name because we haven't announced it publicly, but they've got 5 million fans in their database. And they could not tell you which one is the most valuable or least valuable. They have no insight on it. Now, there's limited amounts of data. They have it in kind of pockets. They might be able to see, there's a certain amount of ticket buying data. We see your merch buying data, and they know who their season ticket people are. But it's in silos, and it's not like there's not a lot of intelligence across the organization from a data standpoint.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.